everyone, and welcome to 2023 and to another edition of Let's Talk Criterion. Now, we've a busy month ahead of us with 4 US scheduled releases and only 2 UK scheduled releases. In the UK, we have The Breakfast Club, directed by John Hughes, and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, directed by Terry Gilliam. Now, this is only available on disc in Blu-ray in the UK, and we have the same title in the US, but that's also available in 4K UHD. We have Imitation of Life, directed by John M. Stahl, the Europe trilogy from Lars von Trier, This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection from Le Mohang Jeremiah Mosese, and Bergman Island from Maya Hansen-Løve. Terry Gilliam first came to fame as the animator and an actor in the iconic British comedy team Monty Python. He established himself with his stop-frame animation, which of course was used in all of the episodes of the TV series, and his zany sense of humour passed across to film as well when they made Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Life of Brian and the Meaning of Life. Now, he branched out alone with his debut feature, which was Jabberwocky, using many of his Python pals, and of course featuring Michael Palin in a central role. His feature Time Bandits from 1981 moved on again, but it wasn't until Brazil that he matured as a serious filmmaker. Despite, of course, the horrific saccharine studio cut that was made by executives, the film still managed to survive and has now become a dystopian classic. Now, his next feature to follow that was The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and it came out in 1988. But that was sadly ill-fated as a bloating retelling of the classic tales with massive over-budgeting and prolonged shooting schedules, which dogged the production throughout, resulting in a rather poor box office pickup and disaffected critical reviews. But all that doesn't detract from the fact that the film, although somewhat over-ambitious, is still regarded by many as a classic, very much in the Gilliam vein. The boundless imagination of Terry Gilliam yields a dazzling fantasy of epic proportions, inspired by the extravagant exploits of the fabled Baron Munchausen. This spectacle, born of a famously turbulent production, follows the whimsical 18th century nobleman played by John Neville as he embarks on an outlandish quest that takes him from faraway lands to the moon and to the belly of a sea monster and beyond, meanwhile waging battle against a vengeful sultan and the tyranny of logic. Packed frame to frame with special effects, mischievous wit and colourful performances, including a very young Sarah Polley as the Baron's no-nonsense sidekick, the Oscar-nominated The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is a lavish celebration of the triumph of make-believe over reality. Told tales based loosely on the German adventurer Hieronymus Karl Friedrich Freiherr von Munchausen, or Baron Munchausen, were compiled by Rudolf Erich Rasp and published for English readers in 1785 as The Surprising Adventures of Baron Munchausen, or Baron Munchausen's narrative of his marvellous travels and campaigns in Russia. Now, the tales were further embellished and translated back to German by Gottfried August Berger in 1786. These tales were frequently extended and translated throughout the 19th century, further fictionalized into the 1901 American novel Mr. Munchausen. Munchausen is the third entry in Gilliam's trilogy of imagination, preceded by Time Bandits and Brazil, and all are about the craziness of our awkwardly ordered society and the desire to escape it through whatever means possible. So whatever the impression you get, the film is still a treat for the eyes, and the mind of Gilliam unfolds on the screen with a cast headed by John Neville as Baron Munchausen. John Neville was a popular choice from the Royal Shakespeare Company. Eric Idle as Bertold Desmond, Sarah Polley as Sally Salt, Oliver Reed as Vulcan, Charles McKeown as Adolphus and Rupert, Winston Dennis as Albrecht and Bill, Jack Purvis as Gustavus and Jeremy, Valentina Cortese as Queen Adriane and Violet, Jonathan Pryce as the Right Ordinary Horatio Jackson, Bill Patterson as Henry Salt, Peter Jeffrey as Sultan Mahmud I, and Uma Thurman as Venus and Rose, and finally Alison Steadman as Daisy. Now, as you can see, a very impressive and mainly British set of actors there, including a young Uma Thurman as well. Now, the 4K UHD is a Dolby Vision encode and has the following supplemental features. An audio commentary featuring Gilliam and his co-screenwriter Charles McKeown. Documentary on the making of the film itself. New video essay by critic and filmmaker David Cairns about the history of Baron Munchausen character. behind-the-scenes footage from the film's special effects, and that's narrated by Gilliam. Deleted scenes with a commentary by Gilliam. Storyboards for unfilmed scenes narrated by Gilliam and McKeown. Original marketing materials including a trailer and electronic press kit featurettes, as well as preview cards and advertising proposals read by Gilliam. Miracle of Flight from 1974, an animated short film by Gilliam. An episode of the South Bank Show from ITV from 1991 on Gilliam. And a written essay by critic and author Michael Koreski. And new cover art is by Abigail Giuseppe. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen has a running time of 126 minutes, and it's available in the US from Tuesday the 3rd of January on 4K UHD, and in the UK from Monday the 30th of January on Blu-ray only. Now, director John M. Stahl has made some classic movies in his time. In 1919, he signed on with Louis B. Mayer Pictures in Hollywood, and in 1924, he was part of the Mayer team that founded MGM Studios. In 1927, Stahl was one of the 36 founding members of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. With the industry's transition to talkies and feature-length films, Stahl successfully made the adjustment. From 1927 through 1929, Stahl was an executive at the short-lived independent studio Tiffany Pictures, and he renamed this company Tiffany Stahl Productions. Now, sadly, due to the deterioration of the original camera negatives, some of his original earlier films have been permanently lost. But many, including Sowing the Wind, In Old Kentucky, Strictly Dishonourable, and, of course, Magnificent Obsession, have survived. And The Imitation of Life from 1934 now gets a Criterion facelift, and along with the excellent Lever to Heaven, is the second film by John M. Stahl to join the Criterion Collection. Imitation of Life explores the friendship between two struggling single mothers. One, played by Claudette Colbert, a working-class white woman who ascends to the top of the business world, and the other, Louise Beavers, her black housekeeper, whose life is shattered by the rejection of her rebellious, white-passing daughter, Freddie Washington. It is in this latter relationship, attuned to America's bitter racial realities and heartbreakingly enacted by trailblazing black performers, Beavers and Washington, that lends the film its transcendent emotional power. Now, this first adaptation of Fanny Hurst's best-selling novel boldly confronts the complexities and contradictions of racial identity, economic exploitation, and the limits of the American dream. Fanny Hurst's inspiration in writing her novel, Imitation of Life, was a road trip she took to Canada. Now, she took it with her friend, the African-American short story writer and folklorist Zora Neale Hurston. The novel was originally going to be called Sugar House, but was changed just before it was published. The themes of the film, to the modern eye, deal with very important issues. Passing the role of skin colour in the black community and tensions between its light-skinned and dark-skinned members, the role of black servants in white families, and maternal affection. Now, the cast consists of the actors of various ages, and they're playing the principal protagonists at their various ages. Claudette Colbert is Beatrice Bea Pullman. Warren William is Steve Archer. Rochelle Hudson plays Jessie Pullman, aged 18. Ned Sparks is Elmer Smith. Louise Beavers plays Delia Johnson. Freddie Washington is Peola Johnson, aged 19. Dorothy Black plays Peola Johnson, aged 9. Juanita Quigley is baby Jessie Pullman, aged 3. And Marilyn Nolden is Jessie Pullman, aged 8. Now, Universal Pictures had difficulty receiving approval from the censors at the Hayes office at the time for the original script they submitted for Imitation of Life. Joseph Breen objected to the elements in the story which not only violated the production code, but were very dangerous from the standpoint both of industry and public policy. Now, the main concern they had, of course, was with the character of Paola, who was represented by this young woman considered black, but with sufficient white ancestry to pass off as white, and the desire to do so. Susan Courtney says that the PCA participated in Hollywood's ongoing desire to remake interracial desire an historical fact, and as always already having been a taboo. Now, in 2005, Imitation of Life was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry, being deemed culturally, historically or aesthetically significant. And it was also named by Time magazine in 2007 as one of the 25 most important films on race. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Assistant Director and Best Sound Recording at the 7th Academy Awards. And the disc comes with the following supplemental features: a new introduction to the film by Imogen Sarah Smith, contributor to The Call of the Heart, John M. Stahl and Hollywood Melodrama; a new interview with Miriam J. Petty, author of Stealing the Show; African-American performers and audiences in 1930s Hollywood about the resonance of Louise Beavers and Fredi Washington's performances; trailer, which was cut for segregated black cinemas at the time of the film's release, plus an essay by Petty. New cover art is by Katya Mesigbolskaya. Imitation of Life is directed by John M. Stahl and joins the collection in the US on Blu-ray on the 10th of January, and it's slated for a February the 27th release here in the UK. Next, we move on to one of the more controversial directors in the Criterion Collection, and that, of course, is Lars von Trier. With his dazzling first 3 features, Lars von Trier sought nothing less than to map the soul of Europe, its troubled past, anxious present, and uncertain future. Linked by a fascination with hypnotic states and the mesmeric possibilities of cinema, the films that make up the Europe trilogy, The Element of Crime, Epidemic, and Europa, filter the continent's turbulent history, guilt and traumas through the Danish provocateur's audacious deconstructions of genres, including film noir, melodrama, horror and science fiction. And above all, they are bravura showcases for von Trier's hallucinatory visuals, with each shot a tour de force of technical invention and his dark imagination. In The Element of Crime, we see a detective named Fisher, who has become an expatriate, living in Cairo, undergoing hypnosis in order to recall his last case. The Europe of his dreamlike recollection is a dystopia, dark and decaying. Fisher remembers pursuing an elusive killer called the Lotto Murderer, who was strangling and then mutilating young girls who were selling lottery tickets. He attempts to track down the killer using the controversial methods outlined in a book entitled The Element of Crime, written by his disgraced mentor Osborne. Now, he is joined in his search by a prostitute named Kim, who it turns out has had a child by his target. Be it in a sulphurous yellow glow pierced only by startling flashes of electric blue and red, The Element of Crime combines hard-boiled noir, dystopian science fiction and dazzling operatic flourishes to yield a celluloid nightmare of terrifying beauty. Now, the word depicted in the film is semi-derelict. Disordered collections of similar or identical objects are found in many of the scenes, reinforcing the sense of a crumbling society. Examples include white paper, light bulbs, heaps of keys, surgical scissors, glass bottles, rubber stamps, and Coca-Cola cans. The film employs the film noir conventions of monochrome footage, apparently constant night, and the frequent presence of water, such as rain and rivers. British actor Michael Elphick plays Fisher. Now, you may remember him as the night porter in David Lynch's The Elephant Man from 1980 and the 80s ITV television series called Boone. He was the title character in that. The cast for The Element of Crime also features Esmond Knight as Osborne, Mimi Lai as Kim, Gerald Wells as Kramer, Ahmed El Senwani as the therapist, Astrid Henning Jensen as the housekeeper, Janos Hersko as the coroner, and Stig Larsson as his assistant. The Element from Crime is from 1984 and starts off the Europe trilogy. It certainly polarised critics at Cannes at the time. Not the first time and certainly not the last time for a Lars von Trier feature. Now, the second film in the trilogy is Epidemic, a jet black comedy of contagion, a subversive medical horror freakout, and a sly meta-cinematic prank. Now, Lars von Trier's sophomore feature, this, and it finds the director channeling his singular thematic obsessions into an evocatively lo-fi, perversely self-reflexive provocation. Now, the filmmaker himself stars in the film as a harried screenwriter whose efforts to complete a script about an outbreak of a deadly disease coincide with a grisly real-life plague. The twisted reflection on Europe's haunted past, from the Black Death to World War II and its scarred present, Epidemic is von Trier at his most idiosyncratic and audaciously experimental. The film is divided into 5 days, and on the first day, the protagonists, screenwriters Lars and Niels, lose the only copy of a film script, The Policeman and the Whore, a reference to the element of crime, incidentally. And they begin to write a new script about an epidemic, the outbreak of a plague-like disease. The protagonist is a doctor, Mesmer, who, against the will of the Faculty of Medicine of an unknown city, goes to the countryside to help people. During the next days, the facts of the script join the real-life events in which a similar disease starts to spread. Lars and Niels go to Germany, where they meet a man who describes the Allied bombing of Cologne during the Second World War. Now, the film was screened in the Un Certain Regard section at the 1987 Cannes Film Festival, and it was nominated for Best Film at the Fantasporto International Fantasy Film Festival in 1988. The cast features Lars von Trier as himself, Dr. Mesmer, Niels Vorsell as himself, Alain Duval, Ole Ernst, and Michael Gelting. Now, it's cinema as play therapy, this, and an adventure for in-jokes and the filmmaker's views on the similarity of hypnosis and watching movies, the creative filmmaking process, financing films, hospital care, and various other ticklish subjects. And arguably the film's most humorous scene, of course, is von Trier regular Udo Kier playing himself and doing a monologue about a World War II story his dead mother told him, where he tells the conclusion first ruining the story's punchline. It's an obsessed film that's too murky to be great cinema in itself, but interesting enough to remain intriguing. And the final film in the trilogy is Europa from 1991, and the most accomplished. You will now listen to my voice. On the count of 10, you will be in Europa. Max von Sydow's ominous, hypnotic induction inaugurates the entrancing final installment of Lars von Trier's Europe trilogy. An idealistic American, Jean-Marc Barr, travels to post-war Germany to take a job as a sleeping car conductor for the Zentropa Railway, and finds himself plunged into a murky, Kafkaesque world of intrigue and betrayal, where the shadow of Nazism hovers menacingly over everything. Now, the film features an international ensemble cast, including Germans Barbara Sokowa and Udo Kier, expatriate American Eddie Constantine, and Swedes Max von Sydow and Ernst Hugo Järegård. Now, this was a German-born French-American Jean-Marc Barr's first collaboration with Lars von Trier. Europa was influenced by Franz Kafka's America, and the title was chosen as an echo of that novel. Europa employs an experimental style of cinema, combining largely black and white visuals with occasional intrusions of colour, having actors interact with rear projected footage and layering different images over one another to surreal effect. Now, the voiceover narration uses an unconventional second-person narrative, imitative of a hypnotist, and the film's characters, music, dialogue and plot are self-consciously melodramatic and ironically imitative of film noir conventions. The film itself was shot throughout Poland, in Jokna Cathedral and the Jokna Roundhouse, and in Denmark, Nordisk Film Studios, Copenhagen and the Copenhagen Dansk Hydraulisk Institute. Von Trier's production company, Zentropa Entertainments, is named after the sinister railway network featured in the film, which is in turn named after the real-life train company, Metropa. Now, the film won 3 awards at the 1991 Cannes Film Festival. That's Best Artistic Contribution, Jury Prize, and Technical Grand Prize. Upon realising he had not won the Palme d'Or, von Trier gave judges the finger and stormed out of the venue. The Europe trilogy comes with an interesting but somewhat limited set of supplemental features. There's audio commentaries featuring von Trier, producer Peter Albeck Jensen, and actors Jean-Marc Barr and Udo Kier. Making of a documentary from 1991. Documentary from 1991 featuring an interview with von Trier and footage from the set as well as the film's Cannes premiere and press conference. Interview from 2005 with von Trier about the Europe trilogy. Programmes featuring interviews with film scholar Peter Schlepplern and many of von Trier's collaborators. There's a trailer, of course, as well. Now, of course, Lars von Trier continued to make more controversial and thought-provoking films like Antichrist, and went on to form Dogma 95, which has gone down in cinematic history. He's an interesting and challenging filmmaker to watch, and enjoyment would not be the word I would use to describe his films. But his contribution to European and to world cinema is certainly not to be underestimated. Lars von Trier, Europe Trilogy, joins the collection on Tuesday the 17th of January in the US only, on Blu-ray, a Spine 1168. John Hughes was an 80s film director who mainly tackled teen comedy mixed with pathos, and his films were enjoyed by audiences of millions of all ages. 16 Candles, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, She's Having a Baby and Uncle Buck. His coming-of-age feature was The Breakfast Club. This crossed the normal boundaries of teen comedy into the adult world of feelings and as such touched the aesthetic that he had been aiming for. 5 wayward teens are in detention at their local high school. No one knows why they're there, and at first they seem to have nothing whatsoever in common. A prom queen type, Claire Standish, played by Molly Ringwald, a sports athlete, Andrew Clark, Emilio Estevez, a nerd, Brian Johnson, played by Anthony Michael Hall, a basket case, Alison Reynolds, played by Ali Sheedy, and a rebellious pot-smoking adolescent, John Bender, played by Judd Nelson. There's also a disinterested teacher, Paul Gleason, and keeping a watchful eye on things, of course, and he resents being there. The only other character featuring in the film is the janitor, John Capelos, who, of course, has some knowledge to impart to the wayward gang when they break out of the library where they are being confined to go roaming aimlessly around the school. It's the skill with which Hughes ekes out the real reasons why they're all there and in detention, and their realization as well that all of them have something in common, and they're forming a longer relationship through the initial humiliation and, of course, teasing in the library. The soundtrack album contains 10 songs that are played partially throughout the movie, performed by bands and singers of the rock and new wave genre of the time, including 3 instrumental songs by record producer Keith Forsey. Simple Minds' international hit Don't You Forget About Me is played across the opening and the closing credits. A music video was made for this song and for Wang Chung's Fire in the Twilight. Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall both starred in Hughes' previous 1984 film 16 Candles, and towards the end of filming, Hughes asked them both would they like to be in The Breakfast Club. Hall became the first to be cast in the film, agreeing to the role of Brian Johnson, and his real-life mother and sister play the same roles in the film. Now, principal photography for The Breakfast Club began on March the 28th, 1984, and ended in May. Filming took place at Maine North High School in Des Plaines in Illinois, and that had been closed in May 1981. Now, the same setting was also used for interior scenes of Hughes' 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which featured exterior shots from the nearby Glenbrook North High School. The library at Maine North High School, considered to be too small for the film, prompted the crew to build a virtually identical but larger set in the school's gymnasium. The actors rehearsed for 3 weeks, and then they shot the film in sequence. Later, Hughes revealed that he shot the 2 films concurrently to save time and money, and some outtakes of both films feature elements of the film crews working on the other film. Now, the first print of The Breakfast Club was 150 minutes in length. Now, during a cast reunion in honour of the film's 25th anniversary, Ali Sheedy revealed that a director's cut did exist, but Hughes' widow did not disclose any details concerning its whereabouts. The Breakfast Club has the following special features. is an alternate 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack on the Blu-ray. Audio commentary from 2008 featuring actors Anthony Michael Hall and Judd Nelson. New interviews with the actors Molly Ringwald and Ali Sheedy. A new video essay featuring director John Hughes' production notes read by Nelson. Documentary from 2008 featuring interviews with cast and crew. 50 minutes of never before seen, deleted and extended scenes. Rare promotional and archival interviews. Excerpts from a 1985 American Film Institute seminar held with Hughes. A 1999 radio interview with Hughes. Segment from a 1985 episode of NBC's Today featuring the film's cast. An audio interview with Ringwald from a 2014 episode of This American Life. A trailer. And of course, there is a written essay by the author and the critic David Camp. Quite an impressive set of features there. It's a seminal 80s coming-of-age movie that transcends a standard tale of teen angst and provides an insight into youth psyche of the time, with beautifully drawn characterizations provided by an excellent ensemble cast. The Breakfast Club has a running time of 97 minutes, and it's now available in the UK collection as Spine 905. With a poet's eye for place, light and the spiritual dimensions of everyday existence, Le Mohang Jeremiah Mosese crafts a meditation on the concept of homeland and a transcendent elegy for what is lost in the name of progress. Grieving and alone following the deaths of her husband and children, elderly Mantua, played by Mari Twala Malongo, in a soul-shaking end-of-life performance, prepares for her own death and to be buried alongside her ancestors. When plans for a new dam near her village in the landlocked kingdom of Lesotho threaten to literally wash her away and all she holds dear, Mantua takes a last stand, mobilising her neighbours to fight for their land and their way of life. The experience of watching Mosese's visionary, much lauded "This is not a burial, it's a resurrection" is as timeless and elemental as the land itself. Now, it was selected as a Lesotho entry for the Academy Award for Best International Feature Film at the 93rd Academy Awards, but it was not nominated, and it was the first time Lesotho had made a submission in this category. The film received popular reviews from critics and was screened at several international film festivals. Although it's so accurate emotionally, politically, environmentally, psychologically about a specific context, a village in Lesotho, it is also an archetypal film, not only through the poetic, resonant filming, editing soundtrack, but through how it weaves so many philosophical, spiritual layers into the specific context. Now, the features on the Blu-ray are a 2K digital master approved by the director with 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack. A new audio commentary featuring Mosese and producer Kit Pansgru. Mosese's short films Mozongo and Behemoth, or The Game of God, from 2014 and 2016, along with his 2019 essay, Film Mother, I Am Suffocating. This is my last film about you, with a new introduction by Mosese. A trailer and a written essay by the novelist and playwright Zax Md. A new cover art for this particular disc is by Nassim Hickson. Now, it's nice that Criterion have included some of the director's shorter films to allow more insight into him as a director. This is not a burial, it's a resurrection is a 2019 feature and has a running time of 122 minutes, and it joins the collection in the US only as Spine 1169. Finally, we have a film that was released on Blu-ray in the UK on the Mubi distribution label. Bergman Island. It's directed by Maya Hansen-Løve. In this feature, she embarks on a luminous summertime odyssey to the home of Ingmar Bergman for her 7th feature, a graceful, shape-shifting tale about the interplay of life and art and the ways in which stories are born. In search of inspiration for their current filmmaking projects, Chris, Vicky Krieps and her partner Tim Roth travel to the remote island of Faro in Sweden, where Bergman lived and worked for decades. There, the spirit of the cinema master looms as Chris confronts her complicated relationships to work, men, motherhood, and her artistic influences. Also featuring in the film is Maya Wasikowska and Anderson Danielson Lee. Now, Bergman Island is a rich deconstruction of the mysteries of the creative process and the journey that every filmmaker takes from thought to page to screen. Maya Hansen-Løve is a French film director, screenwriter and former actress. Now, she's won several accolades for her work. Her first feature film was All Is Forgiven, and it won the Louis Deluc Prize for Best First Film in 2007, along with Céline Sciamma's Water Lilies. Hansen-Løve's film Father of My Children won the Special Jury Prize at Enceinte en Regard section at the 2009 Cannes Film Festival. And in 2014, Hansen-Løve was awarded the status of Chevalier in Ordre des Arts et des Lettres. And in 2016, she won the Silver Bear for Best Director for her film Things to Come at the 66th Berlin International Film Festival, as well as becoming a member of the Academy of the Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Now, the film was set to star Greta Gerwig, Maya Wasikowska, Anderson Danielson Lee, and John Turturro. But in August 2018, it was announced that Vicky Krieps would replace Gerwig and Turturro would no longer be starring in the film. Production began in August 2018, and Tim Roth was later cast in the lead role, and Bergman Island premiered at Cannes in 2021, having been postponed from the cancelled 2020 edition of the festival. The cast in Bergman Island are Maya Wasikowska as Amy herself, Vicky Krieps as Chris Sanders, Tim Roth as Tony Sanders, Anders Danielson Lee as Josef himself, Hampus Nordenson as Hampus, Anki Larsson as Assa, Kirsten Brunberg as Hedda, Melinda Kinnaman as Berit, and Stig Bjorkman as Stig. Now, there's fairly sparse features on the Blu-ray, but they are: a new interview with Hansen-Løve, new interview with actor Vicky Krieps, cast member Gabe Klinger's short film Bergman's Ghosts from 2021, and a written essay by the film critic Devika Garish. A new cover art for Bergman's Island is by Jason Hardy. Now, it seems that the newer releases don't seem to have as many supplemental features contained on them. Bergman Island has a running time of 113 minutes and is available in the US from Tuesday the 31st of January as Spine 1170. So there we go, an interesting set of releases from Criterion for January 2023. I'll be back in February previewing in the UK collection Vivre à Vie by Jean-Luc Godard. In the US, we have the 4K premiere of Three Colors by Krzysztof Kieslowski, Franco Zeffirelli's classic love story Romeo and Juliet, Dazed and Confused arriving on 4K UHD, two films by Marguerite Duras, and Hollywood Shuffle directed by Robert Townsend. So, until next month, from me, it's goodbye, and above all, good viewing.